It's about 3:15 in the morning. This is like a regular occurrence of me waking in the early hours and struggling to get back to sleep. Usually I'll do a little bit of reading and put on some brown noise. That's been my strategy the last few weeks or so or more. It's been on my mind to try and record a vlog, perhaps this past week or so. Yeah, a lot has changed since in the last month, and I think maybe it's been 2 or 3 months or longer since I recorded. Perhaps it's good just to start with how I'm feeling at the moment. I think a big part of me is feeling very low. Maybe in some way feeling a bit defeated. And a lot of that feels to do with the long COVID symptoms, especially the brain fog. I think the physical fatigue is definitely a challenge, but I find when I'm able to get outside and when I'm able to walk, to some degree I can sort of withstand some of the pain and difficulty. A lot of that is the mental sort of pain. I find that I'm sort of walking through the at times like huge discomfort, as if I've just walked miles already at the start of the day, and accepting that my legs are really weak, but it's the brain fog that's really taking a toll, I think. Can't remember how much. I'm sure I've talked about this over and over, but I guess it's like a chronic condition, so perhaps I'll give myself permission to talk about it as much as I want in some ways. In one way, what else is there to talk about for me at the moment? I think the difficult thing is I kind of realised that how much the brain fog, and as you can mix in the autistic symptoms, there's a bit of an overlap as well with the alexithymia and not being able to process, or the huge difficulty in processing emotions or processing in general for the mind. And if that runs in parallel along with the brain fog, then, or blended with the brain fog, then it's so limiting and disabling. So I've moved in the recent times, and on one hand, there's a lot of gratitude in having a bigger space. I can sense sort of being here, how maybe compressed my mind has become by being in such a smaller space for so long. It's funny the effect that can have. I can sense my mind sort of being squashed, or having, sort of in that state and trying to, it's almost like physically kind of sitting in in a ball or in a really crouched position for a very long time, and then suddenly being able to now stretch your legs out, sort of thing, but mentally in that way of just not feeling the walls so squeezed in on me. There are a lot of challenges being here, though. It's that I'm sort of on the edge of the city and bordering the countryside, which but where I am, there's an airport nearby, so there's challenges with noise, and the type of structure I'm in, it's a kind of holiday home. When I introduce this place to sort of people I talk to, sometimes I use the word, it's like a terrapin, or I remember sort of outdoor classrooms I used to go to in primary school or even at infant school as well. So it's kind of like that kind of structure. So I'm finding noises like the insulation, or I'm right against like a country road, and it's at times there can be a lot of cars that go through there that are heading to the airport. So and then I quite often hear like a popping sound, and I did some research about sounds really in detail now, but just the effects of temperature change in buildings and things, and they were saying like the terrapin, it sort of can contract a lot easier, like releasing heat in the night and things a lot quicker, which could result in that sound. But all buildings like do it, but this can be a bit louder because of the sort of materials used in the build here. And the most challenge, I guess, is that walking around here is not very accessible. For instance, I can't walk to a bus stop or walk to a supermarket. I have to use other means to do that, which can be stressful. And just walking in general, I think as my sort of challenges with social connection it's kind of been fluctuating, where I've been putting in like effort to see friends, and that's been difficult to maintain at times, where I needed breaks, or sometimes it happens in bunches where maybe I have like a lot of time on my own, and then some of those social occasions can come up all at the same time, and so it can it's hard to manage, really. Sometimes it's week by week, but so moving, that's a big I think it was underlined by my counsellor that it's such a big deal to move, and then someone who's dealing with some extra challenges with change, so autism around change, and that can be extra difficult, and moving generally is difficult, a difficult process. And I've actually just been taking a break from counselling. That's been another huge change as well. I find with the brain fog, it's really, really difficult to talk in counselling. It can seem like I'm talking very clearly now, but I think when trying to describe feelings and emotions and trying to, I guess, give the counsellor information for them to work with, to process, to work with me, it's very difficult. Like explaining brain fog in detail, it's extremely stressful. Not sure how far I'm going to get in this video, but we'll see. But answering some kind of, some of these therapeutic questions of why, or how does that feel, and trying to go into really detail to explain it, it's so. And I think a lot of the therapeutical process is like trying to go into detail and get things across and on the tables for them, so they have something to work with and for them to understand. I find when I'm so limited in that way, it just makes the whole sort of format of that type of therapy difficult. It was a really painful decision, because making decisions at the moment is getting increasingly difficult. So it's almost kind of over a period of months, really, that I was going back and forth of, should I take a break from counselling, because each session is just so painful, and I leave the sessions quite often a bit disoriented and confused of what I said and what can I take away from the session. And and I feel that was all down to sort of my brain fog, mixing in, I guess, with autism. It feels strange to, at the moment I've just paused counselling. I've got the sort of situation set up where if I don't get in contact in the next 2 or 3 weeks, then our sessions will just close. So it's kind of up to me, but it makes it in a way there's no pressure. I don't have to sort of remake a decision again after a few weeks to say, okay, I'm definitely ending now. It's kind of almost made a sort of soft decision to end, but the door's open for a few weeks just for me to see how it feels. But I don't think I can see myself going back. Not that I don't need support. It feels like I desperately need support, but in terms of it's a private counselling, so it's those kind of fees of payment, and trying to the financial aspect and also the emotional aspect of how much am I able to get out of counselling, even though it's great to have someone who gives you their attention, you feel safe and you feel listened to, but there's obviously the pain in getting through each session, and so it feels a bit strange ending in that way, because I'm in such a difficult place just day to day. So it's kind of two big things. In some ways I'm coping okay with the move. I mean, I'm accepting moment to moment of like being here and just sort of coping. But there is a feeling or a sense of isolation here as well, where I think where I was last time, it's almost a bit of a catch-22, because when I'm around people, like if I'm in like a sort of busy park, or I get probably some connection from that, from even though I'm not sort of directly engaging, but sort of there's some kind of humanizing thing just to see other people sort of do their own thing. Or it's painful as well at the same time, because I feel like I'm not really living life at the moment. I've probably said that many times. It feels more true now than it has been before. Things are probably getting more severe with the brain fog. I've noticed it in trying to manage like the food I have, and again, this is so hard to explain, but I just can't. Every day it's just a huge stressful process of trying to figure out what to eat, and and how to use up the ingredients I have. So I'm going to try and implement some strategies around food and meals as well, of just trying to have some kind of set meals if I can. I have like a rough thing in mind, but I guess the difficult thing is it's so unpredictable. Even making a sandwich, sometimes it's so unpredictable of what my energy is going to be like that day. And you bring in mood as well, like depression, which is something that's probably been, I haven't labelled it in that way, but I can sense there's a deep, maybe sort of a low mood coming that's been there for a while, which is understandable. One of the really tricky things, I've struggled writing for a long time, but it's only dawned on me now, and writing's become even more difficult now that even the hope to write is not there anymore. I think in the last few years, where I've written, dribs and drabs of a novel over those years, but there's always been some hope that, okay, or I just need to get a few good days under me and get some momentum. But I think it's just, each time I've been showing up recently, I've had this new routine of going into the city a couple of days a week, to be around people, sometimes to see friends, if I can. To have some movement, so I'm not sort of isolated here, alone and indoors, which can sort of foster low mood, depression, and so recently I've had. Usually I have Tuesdays I go into the city, and then before it used to be, this was maybe about a few weeks ago, Tuesdays I'd have my counselling in the morning, so it was an excuse, or I would kind of have to go into the city, and then I would want to sort of just make the most of being there before heading back. And then I chose Fridays because that was when a mental health support group is on Friday afternoon, so there was kind of two anchors there in my week, two reasons to go into the city. Now counselling has ended, and I'm not sure. I think I might need a break from the support group. Just find it really difficult to get something out of it, which is painful again, because part of me wants connection, but it's also really painful as well, to try and connect, because it feels like so much of me's disappeared or is lost in the brain fog. And again, you add in the autistic stuff, which has it's maybe hard to explain that as well, but just dealing, I guess, and discovering with that, with unmasking and trying to feel like, okay, well, what is my sort of personality? How much am I being masking? Which it's complicated because your part of that's me as well. It's not just like putting on a complete fake mask, and I'm sure there's underneath there's like courage in masking in some ways. There's elements of you and mixing in with trying to be normal or what's socially normal. And just dealing with the change now where it makes it really tricky. Even sometimes just knowing what to say or not really having anything to say. Or in the moment, feeling that sort of heaviness and not being able to access what wants to be shared in the moment, and talking to somebody. And it can make you feel quite cut off as well, I find. I'm aware that I'm probably feeling quite autistically drained, sensory-wise. I had a family member stay for a number of days, which was, on one level, it's really nice to see them spend time, but I noticed I perhaps wasn't taking enough breaks and resting things. So maybe after a few days, my senses were sort of a bit burned out with seeing various people and kind of having everything always turned on. It kind of changes everything. So, not sort of resting my senses enough, and naturally when there's a change in a bit of routine, and spending time not alone, it can have an impact quite quickly. So so it's some acknowledgement that I'm feeling quite a bit burned out, so that can naturally make one feel a bit low as well. And it's easy to have that black and white thinking. Like maybe in a few days my energy, or some of my energy, will return in a sense, and maybe I'll be more talkative or be able to hold a conversation or engage a bit more. But right now it's just a sense of feeling extremely low and just trying to get through the next 5 minutes at the moment. I think just going back to writing, it's only been in the last 2 weeks where it's dawned upon me that I won't be able to maybe write fiction anymore, and that's been such a huge anchor. I think even before the autism diagnosis, that was what was kind of keeping me going, I guess, because it gave me some purpose. There was I find with writing, it was a really important pursuit of doing something of significance, being useful in one way, knowing that, okay, perhaps trying to publish this novel, and a novel where at the centre and essence of it is me trying to help people. So write stories that people can escape to, or characters that they can relate to, and characters that are often going through really challenging times. So people who are going through challenging lives, and I guess we all have challenging lives in our own way, that they can relate to and escape with. And most significantly, it was an escape for me. It enabled me to connect as well by having this sort of imaginary world, and it kind of offset sort of the loneliness. I think in my 20s, when I sort of moved away from a group of friends who, a lot of that, the main activity was kind of going out drinking, so I'd like participate in that less and less, because I don't drink. So and there was like a profound loneliness, but on the other side of that coin, there was a great opportunity to write, to find solace in writing. And it fitted in great because I needed time alone to write. So there's a part of me saying, oh, okay, perhaps maybe for various reasons, that, I don't have sort of fulfilling connections at the time, but it's okay because I need time alone to write. And I kind of, and it's just, I think it's just a really big deal that I don't have that right now. And again, it's really hard to put into words and to say more, feeling-wise. Don't know if sometimes it helps really, because the word devastated comes up, but I don't know if I'm overreacting or... But the reason I was kind of bringing this up was on Tuesdays and Fridays I'd sort of go into the city. I would sort of hit the library to write, and the last couple of times it's just been like a big it just hasn't happened. I've been sitting there and I'd write some sentences, and then things just wouldn't be cohesive. Like at the moment, I'm 40,000 words into a novel, which is maybe roughly about halfway or getting there. And I've just realised I'm just not connected to the story and the characters at all. And it just shows the 2 or 3 years of fragmented writing where the brain fog's increase. I've just not been able to hold a story in my mind. And of course it affects memory as well. So I think a big thing I used to rely on before was I didn't used to plot my novels. I just had it in my head. I was just sort of engaged in it and can hold the world in my head and sort of navigate from there. But the way things are with the brain fog, I just feel completely lost, really. And even trying to write things down, like I did like a chapter summaries of each of the things, and it was just so hard to process and just allow the creative process to unfold. And so this past week I took my journal and a book with me to read as almost like a backup. And it was strange in the library because it was super busy. I go to this like big library in the centre of the city, and there's just loads of, I guess, students there. I was thinking maybe it's exam season, but it felt strange me being there because everyone was doing sort of quote unquote serious work with exams and coursework, and I was there sort of fumbling around trying to write a few sentences for a novel or figure out. Like, I think I decided to start again actually with the novel and sort of rewrite pretty much all of it from the start again to reconnect in a way that works for me now. And I'm still probably trying to do that process. I'm trying to find a key that turns, or a story that entices me enough, or it's not too complex. I've tried to simplify the story. But yeah, I think the ingredients of like writing a scene and getting into the character's mind and feeling, okay, what would the character feel if this happened? And I think it's just so hard to do just because of, processing emotions. And I think I just don't have that in me to do that, to feel feelings and processing. And it's just such hard work, and I just get tired so quickly, and then I lose steam in the writing as soon as I hit a small bump. Think, okay, how would they feel if this happened? Is this realistic, or is that? And straight away, the processing is just not there, and it's frustrating. I think I felt like when I was at the library, where are we today? Sunday, so it's I guess Sunday early morning. So a few days ago, it's just like turning a key, but the engine just wouldn't start. So, so going back to just generally like purpose and things, I think that's, I think it's just underestimated how much that's affecting me and how much sort of purpose and direction that shaped my day. And now, without that, it's, again, trying to make adjustments. I feel like I've been doing that for years now, just even with this vlog or my spiritual podcast I was doing, where constantly pulling back, thinking, okay, I can't vlog anymore, so that's too difficult to vlog, and okay, maybe I can do the podcast. That's really good, important work. Again, getting some importance and purpose, and I found that fulfilling until the brain fog got so much, and it was just harder to do a podcast. The ingredients just wasn't there anymore. And I think when something becomes painful, then it's easy to lose the creative aspect of that, or the wanting to do it, because it can feel painful to do, and also painful to observe that what you're trying to say is not being said, and the way you want to express yourself or creatively do something is not being executed. And so it can be really disheartening. And I found with the podcast, I just wasn't able to, I think, number one, sort of be in that sort of presence, to enable to talk from that space. There's so much happening where that's being covered up with the sort of mental disturbances, the difficulties. I did play around with doing an episode a few days ago, like a kind of shard of inspiration came of I think the subject was just communication, I think, and not losing yourself in communicating. But I won't go into detail with that. Going back to sleep, jumping back to sleep. It's been, I think I've lost track now. This is by far the most difficult phases of difficult sleep in my life I've had, which adds to everything else, of course, where routinely I wake up in the early hours and generally get very little sleep afterwards. And I think, I wonder if this started when I did my PIP application last November, I think. And I didn't put anything about sleep, I guess, because I didn't feel like there was enough. I guess I didn't have any evidence to show for it, and it's funny because I still don't really. I've seen a doctor maybe I think once a month or two ago, or a month ago, about the sleep, and then I think I saw them last year about sleep as well when I was going through a really difficult thing. And I'm seeing a doctor next week because I just moved to a new surgery, so I want to get, number one, just get a bit of emotional support with what I'm going through, and update the doctor and meet a doctor just so I can start building a relationship with one, some continuity. But I won't talk about PIP too much, but yeah, it's just it feels such an inhumane system, because it feels like I'm going through all this stuff but don't have the voice to talk about it and also to explain it in a way that fits into their system. For example, I could say, oh, I've been dealing with insomnia for months, maybe longer, which is when dealing with something chronically for months, I'm guessing there's a more solid quality to that. There's something up here where, and the profound impact sleep can have, and then putting that alongside long COVID, and then putting that with someone who's autistic. But they're going to say to me, where's the evidence? Okay, where's the evidence of your sleep? We don't have any. And like, I don't know what to say to that, really, besides that, oh, well, I am the evidence. I'm saying I can't. And even a diagnosis, I don't know if that would even help. Say if I had a diagnosis of insomnia, because the way they've designed it, it's almost like psychological warfare, because they've kind of said we don't need to, it's not about what your health is like, it's about how it affects it. For example, I can have a diagnosis of insomnia or some sleep disorder, but they're going to want evidence of, okay, we understand you have that, but where's the evidence of how it affects you? And that's just, feels like it's impossible to get. Trying to go on a huge, don't want to talk about PIP too much, just because it's so painful. But yeah, just to a quick update, I'm in the mandatory reconsideration stage. So they've wrote to me and said, okay, you don't qualify for PIP. And so I've written some things down, largely to say, what evidence can I show for this? I don't understand. I've given you like my health and diagnosis, which infers the challenges like someone who's autistic. I've written down how that affects me, but they want evidence of how that affects me, which is just a bit of a mind bender. So yeah, I've written that back. So I'm in stage of they're gonna either most likely reject the mandatory reconsideration, reject my appeal for that, and the next stage is tribunal. So I recently made an appointment with the Citizens Advice Bureau and to get help with a few things around housing as well, with like long term, like being here long term where I am won't be good for me. So I'm trying to be a bit proactive and getting help with future stuff. One of the things they mentioned to me was if it gets to tribunal stage, to get in touch with them, that they could help with that. But it's a bit disheartening because I've not heard from them since I made my appointment, and I was told they would get back to me with a few things I'm struggling with, like one of the things was the groceries and processing food and meals, and whether there's some help around that. And also I was kind of offered to say, email us if you've thought of a question that you forgot to say today, because often that can be the case where it can be quite overwhelming trying to fit everything in, and then processing it later, thinking, oh, I forgot to mention that to them or this to them. And so the person said to me that, oh yeah, email if there's a question where you forgot to ask. And so I did that maybe a week ago, and I just haven't heard anything back. So I'm not sure what to do about that. I may just wait a bit longer, because I know they're extremely busy, like most services are, just extremely busy and backed up. And yeah, and then maybe I'll have to try and phone, which I find really difficult doing. Yeah, strange, like even I've been speaking for 40 minutes, but because I can probably talk for another hour, but it still feels a bit hollow, like it doesn't feel like I've really said anything, which is frustrating. I guess one thing to touch upon is, the routine for Tuesday and Fridays. Yeah, just even to try and explain my feelings now, it's frustrating because it's not there. There's lots of stuff underneath, but I can't get access to them. But I think there must be sadness there and frustration about how to spend my time. Because if there was with things sort of becoming more difficult and there's been less options, I've been still trying to make the most of, okay, what am I left with? Like, okay, there's a small thread here that I can pull and use, and then now that's disappearing. Like right now, I can say, okay, even though reading is such a painful process, and so many times I'll read a sentence or two and I'll be done, and then I'll have to take a break and then do a bit more reading. Like yesterday, I've got a book from the library, and I literally read 2 sentences and immediately felt exhausted and thought, okay. And I put the book down thinking, okay, I don't think I can read for the rest of the day, and maybe an hour or so later I read a tiny bit more, and then but reading is something that there must be a little bit of enjoyment from reading, so that's something to sort of acknowledge that, okay. Another thing, finding enjoyment in things is so difficult. It feels like I think when you're in sort of dealing with chronic conditions, then, and if you can class autism as that, but I guess it's sort of chronic symptoms and reactions that are housed in that as well. What was I going to say? Yeah, just it doesn't make things enjoyable because you're just constantly dealing with that. But it's good to acknowledge that there's something there that I can hold on to in my day. Okay, I can do a tiny bit of reading. That's something worth acknowledging, so I don't sort of go more into sort of despair and depression. I've been doing a tiny bit of journaling just for the sake of doing something, and of course journaling is its own torture at the moment, because part of that is what I'm doing now is trying to explain, and although there are some advantages and disadvantages of writing, like the same with me talking here, there's probably things I can say that are more difficult to write, and then there's probably things I can write that's more difficult to say. So there's kind of pros and cons in each sort of expression. But yeah, that's kind of some of my purpose really day to day. Just I did come across an article called it's about people suffering with ME or chronic fatigue, and it's called Unseen. And there's like an arts project they're doing to make it where people can kind of watch little videos of people with really severe chronic fatigue, where people, I think, are like bedbound, and so that like they are unseen. They're not, people don't, they're not kind of seen in society really. I can sort of relate to that as well, even though my symptoms aren't, the severity scale is different for me, but yeah, I can still feel quite unseen, because maybe part of this is my own disability, where it's hard to process, and it feels like people don't understand. Maybe people do more than I realise, but sometimes when I talk about brain fog, it just feels so hollow. It just feels like, oh, people can say, yeah, I've experienced that, and it doesn't really help, because it feels like, well, have you experienced what I am? Not to say it's worse, but I guess each experience is quite unique, and I lose perspective, and I lose whatever it is that when someone empathizes with that, to say, I've been through that. That's difficult. It just doesn't. I'm not able to absorb that empathetic energy, which is quite often it can help people often to make you feel a bit better, to think, okay, well, that's good to know that maybe I'm not alone, or someone has gone through this, and but yeah, it just doesn't seem, and maybe that's just whatever makeup is going on, or mental health symptoms is preventing me from absorbing the benefit of that. And I think to describe stuff is difficult as well, so I'll probably describe it in like a lackluster way, and not able to absorb or process any response. So it all feels, again, quite isolating, and the less kind of, it's a bit of a downward spiral, because the less I'm able to sort of describe stuff, the less you want to talk about it, and then eventually you don't really open up to people anymore, and how difficult things are and how severe things are. And then that has its own effect, where you feel more isolated, and maybe I'm just going around in circles. It's probably right, obviously speaking, it's probably like 4 a.m. now, so I'm going to try and maybe potentially upload this tomorrow. Maybe I won't watch this, because if I do, I probably won't upload it, because I've probably been talking about nothing for 48 minutes. But yeah, I'm going to try and do a bit of reading, put on some of the brown noise as well. And just go back to my sort of sleep hygiene of processing sleep hygiene stuff. Don't know if I feel any better at all from recording this. I don't think I do. I won't say I feel worse, because that's just so such a sad thing to say, but yeah, let's just focus on the next 5 minutes. I'm just going to try and do some reading, try and get sleepy, and just get through the night. I think that's my only main focus now at the moment.